right, hello and welcome. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us this evening for another segment of our Wavelengths alumni series. This series started a few months ago in quarantine as a way to cultivate joy and strengthen our community during these uncertain times, but while also sharing the amazing talents of our alumni around the globe. We'll be featuring a new alum from a different industry or career field every Wednesday between 4 and 6 p.m. Mountain Time, right here on our Semester at Sea Facebook page. So this evening, I have the pleasure of introducing you all to Alex Navarrete. He's from the fall 2007, and he is an experienced customer-facing engineer that loves helping people, solving business and technical problems, and evangelizing complex concepts in a clear and concise manner, something I know I could definitely use help with myself. He's currently working as a solutions engineer at Slack, a tool that aims to make your working life simpler, more pleasant, and more productive. And he's also the host of a sales engineering podcast and a certified acro yoga teacher and an avid traveler when it is safe to travel again. And you can reach out to him on LinkedIn or send him an email, which we can put in the comments on Facebook. But I will turn it over to you, Alex. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Yeah, thanks so much. I'm happy to be here. Hey, what's up, Semester at Sea community? I'm Alex Navarrete. Great to meet you all. My pronouns are he, him. And as Kate said, I've sailed on Semester at Sea fall 2007. And just pretty quickly, two things you touched on. You said I'm a solutions engineer at Slack. I think probably could unpack those a little bit. Most people I meet don't know what a solutions engineer is or what a sales engineer is. And the best definition I've come up to define the role is I'm a technical and strategic counterpart that is part of the sales process when customers are evaluating software. And my main objective in the role is to positively influence revenue. And just as important is ensure that we're setting the customer up for a successful long-term business relationship. And as far as Slack, as you said, Slack aims to make your working life simpler, more pleasant, and more productive. But I think a common misunderstanding with Slack is I hear it referred to as a chat tool pretty often. And it's so much more than that. I think the best analogy I've found to help drive that analogy is it's like thinking of your iPhone or your smartphone as a tool that can text, but yet you can do so much more on your iPhone. You can take photos, you can buy a car, you can make investments, you can organize your entire life there. And that impact that the iPhone does and how it transforms your life, I think as you lean into more layers of Slack, add channels, workflows, and integrations, it starts to transform your working life kind of in that same way.
That's great. And we actually just are starting to integrate Slack at the home office of Semester at Sea. So we'll be looking to pick your brain in the future.
Definitely.
But I want to know a little bit about how you came to know about Semester at Sea. Tell us a little bit about your experience and perhaps how it influenced your career path.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I feel so lucky to have found Semester at Sea. I was one of those students who knew I wanted to study abroad, but didn't know where, had a lot of ideas. And I just was going for a random walk to visit the study abroad office at UCLA. I walked in there and I saw a brochure for Semester at Sea. And it was one of those rare moments in life where when I saw that brochure and I was like, this exists, this cannot be, I don't think I have the ability to go on this, but I'm going to put every ounce of energy I have to take on a little bit of debt, convince family, like uncles, grandparents, everyone, like work, do everything I can to make this happen. And yes, it was definitely one of the best decisions I've made. I think taking that second question, how has Semester at Sea impacted my life and my career? In short, I think Semester at Sea really blew the world open for me. It helped me think a little differently, think a little more creatively, and think outside the box. And as it relates to my career, there are probably two things that as I thought about it, that Semester at Sea has really shaped. The first would be kind of raising the bar. And what I mean by raising the bar is the type of people I met on Semester at Sea were really smart, humble, driven, open-minded, adventurous, curious people. And when I got on the ship, I was like, wow, I want to continue surrounding myself with people like this who inspire me, who challenge me, who push me. And it raised the bar on what I expect for myself and those around me. So to kind of keep dreaming, to keep pushing, and people who are always moving forward in different areas of their life in different industries. So in some ways, they've become mentors or helped like continue to guide in different ways. And the second way is character and value. Because going on a program like Semester at Sea, I think it really shapes who you are and it influences your values. And this ultimately leads to how you're going to show up in life and make decisions at work. So these are very intangible skills. Like I didn't leave Semester at Sea and I was not an Excel expert, that or didn't learn how to code. These very tangible things you're going to see on a job application. But I believe the best companies in the world are hiring based on your values first, your abilities second, and your skills third. Because you can teach skills and you can teach abilities, but you can't teach people what to value. You can't teach empathy, you can't teach integrity, you can't teach, it's very difficult to teach a lot of those skills. So when you get asked these behavioral questions about how did you approach this problem, how did you approach this difficult situation, it's really surfacing who you are and your values. And I think Semester at Sea was definitely a big part of shaping that.
That's great. And I don't know if you'll get into this or if you want to touch on it after your presentation, but for young alumni who are looking to, follow in your footsteps, what advice would you have for them?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I actually do have a couple slides at the end of the presentation.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, to
okay,
talk
great.
about like some very hard skills and some very soft skills that I think would be useful to everyone.
Oh, that's perfect. Well, I will let you take the floor then.
Okay, awesome. So I'm assuming at this point everyone can see the screen. It says future of work. So let's just go ahead and jump into things. This is just a quick agenda. We've already done an introduction, so we'll probably skip through that pretty quickly. But for us to talk about like how work is evolving right now and where it's going, I think we need to quickly visit how we got here, and we'll visit the history of work. Then we're going to spend a bit of time looking forward, looking about like what has changed during this pandemic and what is about to change over this next 6 months to 5, 10 years. And then the last part of the presentation is going to be around some of the skill sets, hard and soft skills that I think are probably going to transcend different industries, not be only useful in technology. And hopefully that will help people who are trying to navigate this kind of uncertain world or this new world of work, or maybe just coming out of college or anything like that. So we already did an introduction. That is an older picture of me. And I think one of the biggest difference I'll call out is I have a COVID haircut at the moment. But I haven't had a haircut since all of this started. But all of that information, I think we all know, so we can move pretty quickly through this and get into the history of work. So a brief history of work in the United States. I think you could start this really wherever you wanted to, but I'm going to start specifically in the Industrial Revolution, which is right around 1880. And this time was, if you jump back to this time, this was a massive shift from agriculture to industry. And this really impacted how society operated, how families operated, how cities worked, how people made money. And at the time, it was probably really hard to understand the impact of what was happening. But a lot of things changed with the Industrial Revolution. This is when we had to standardize on time, because now you had these factories and these assembly lines that required employees to show up at a specific time, and they all had to be there so that they could do their specific jobs and be productive for this mass production. Eventually, this led to these kind of conglomerate corporations that started to, their focus wasn't on, the individual creativity or ideas. They just cared about you doing the job. But also one thing to point out about this photo, and most photos, if you pull up the Industrial Revolution, is this is just all men. When we're talking about work, I think it's it's important to call out the things in history that we try to brush under the rug. But yeah, this was mostly open and work for men. But when we think about the next big event that happened that really blew a big hole into the workforce, I think of World War II. And what World War II did was it allowed, since a lot of men had to leave and go fight off in a war, it allowed an opportunity for women to enter the workforce, and in unprecedented numbers, and in roles that were previously closed only to men. So that doesn't mean these women didn't face incredible challenges and a lot of stereotypes, but it was that first wave of that opportunity. And we are not, I know there are still a lot of struggles that women and a lot of individuals face in the workplace today, or even just in life. But this was a big moment that, when you look back in time, really kind of was that first wave of opening that opportunity. And that brings us to the next big shift and kind of where we're at today, which, depending on how you look at things, can be very exciting, or maybe you're a little more pessimistic. But we have an opportunity where we're going through a shift just as big. It's hard to know how big as an industrial revolution or an entire workforce reevaluating everything. And that's what we're going to spend a bit of time talking about. So let's go to kind of today, the modern era of work. And I'm going to try to bundle things up into a couple of things. We'll start with the internet and software, this knowledge-based economy where now data is being sent digitally. And that really brings us to kind of this slide that I love. This is from 2011. Mark Andreessen, who's a very successful investor here in Silicon Valley, published an article in 2011 that software is eating the world. And in that article, he talks about that we are in the middle of a dramatic and broad technological and economic shift in which software companies are really poised to take over large swaths of the economy. If you jump forward to today and even post-pandemic, you've seen a lot of these software companies and SaaS companies just grow even more exponentially. And a couple things just to call out about what's happening with software and this digital transformation that a lot of people are going through is, when we build software, in some ways, the world's problems also get expressed through software. We connected everyone, but that also means you include bad people and bad instincts. And, there are a lot of unknowns here: privacy, fake news, elections. How are we going to regulate all this? How are we, with software evolving at this rapid pace, how do people stay informed about what's happening? But some of the things we're going to be talking about is what's going to happen when everyone is online. We're forced to be online right now, and what is this changing? So another thing to call out about software when we're looking forward and where it's at right now is I didn't really have this perspective on software until I worked in tech. But what software is doing is it's really just solving the job of the emotional and functional job of a human. So if you are a business and you want to purchase software, why do you do it? Well, maybe you had 5 employees that were able to do this job before, and now with software you can bring that down to 3 or to 1. So effectively, as an organization, it's going to make you more competitive, more productive, or more efficient. That's really what software is doing. And I don't get scared by that, because if you look at human history, every revolution or every advancement has replaced human jobs. And I think companies are taking an approach where they're looking at it as like, hey, if we're able to be more productive here or more efficient here, then what other types of problems can our employees work on to help us innovate, to help us be more productive. So I think of it as software is really just accelerating the rate of innovation, change, and in some ways disruption across a lot of industries. So looking forward, we know the world is going to continue to evolve. But I think there are really two pillars of change that are going to impact work more than any. And the first is technology. So I've already talked about software in the previous slide a bit, and I think there's a ton of room for improvement in software. But like I said earlier, software is just going to reflect where we're at as a society, where we're at as a world. And so when you think about software reflecting where we're at with work, software did that perfectly. When we think about COVID-19 and this pandemic, if this would have happened 10 years ago or 20 years ago, the world would have shut down in such a different capacity. But for a lot of organizations, especially organizations that were already starting to lean into using cloud-based solutions or SaaS, they were able to transition overnight pretty seamlessly. I don't want to say seamlessly, but they were able to bring their office. Everyone is coming into the office 5 days a week to shift overnight within a week. And work was able to continue going because software, the technology, was mirroring how we worked. So I don't think it's tough to predict where the technology is going to take us, because I think technology is going to mirror human behavior, which brings us to this next to this next pillar. And this next pillar is actually where I think most of the change when we look forward is going to come from. And that's culture or social change. And what do I mean when I say culture? Because culture is sadly one of the, it's just such a buzzword. Every company talks about culture and has these values. But what culture, from my perspective, it's the sum of values which serve as kind of a glue to connect a team or an organization. And I think a lot of companies don't get culture right. And it starts to play out as companies go through challenges. So a perfect example is every company has these values, but when things get difficult, maybe they don't earn enough revenue. A lot of times, like, culture goes out the window. Whereas to get it right, you can't throw these values out of the window. You need to, if transparency is one of your values, you need to lean on transparency and be transparent with your employees about the organization. So those are just some examples. And another example how I think culture shows up in work is if a teammate reached out to me and said, hey, like, I'm unable to cover some meetings or do some work tomorrow, my answer would be 100% yes, I got you. But at a different company or maybe in a different role, someone's answer could be like, nah, it's not my work. It's not my problem. You do you. And that spectrum, like how we show up in these situations, is culture. And we try to measure culture like it's intangible. You can't. It's very hard to measure culture. But I think this is where most of the change is going to come for a lot of companies in this next wave of work. Culture is going to be a top priority. It's going to come first, and it really should be top of mind for every individual and every team. So what specifically is going to change about work? Everything here, if I'm being perfectly honest, I don't know. And no one knows exactly what the new processes are going to be, the new norms, what offices will look like. These are all educated guesses based on some of the information I have access to and some of the thought leaders and some of the information shared via like forums or resources that I'm a part of. So everything is just an educated guess, but I can talk you through like what is going to be changed. So the first thing that I think is going to undergo a lot of change is business processes. Everything is going to be evaluated. Every process, every policy. And in fact, this is probably the first time in human history since we started this more modern coming into work, is where everything can be reimagined. Which is kind of cool. So I would recommend, do surveys, listen to employees. And just to give you an example of that, like working hours are, typically the 9 to 5. Where did this come from? This came, it gets credit to Ford, but it really comes from this industrial revolution that happened, this archaic idea that employees had to be in an office doing a task, every minute of productivity performing. And the reality is that where we're at today, this no longer serves us. So I know there are a lot of companies reevaluating everything. Like, should we have 6-hour work days? Should we have 3-day work weeks? This stuff, everything that you can imagine is probably about to be evaluated. And no one knows what's going to come out as norms on the other side. But I think that's a pretty exciting opportunity for us and for the world to have an opportunity to reestablish these norms. For me, one of the things I'm very grateful for in my role at Slack is I understand what my responsibilities are. I understand what success in the role looks like. I understand my deadlines. And from that, I have some general freedom to, sometimes I'm feeling super productive. I wake up early, 7 a.m., and can just crush a ton of work. Sometimes life comes up, people have lives outside of work, and companies are starting to acknowledge that and respect that more. Maybe you have children, maybe you have other commitments. And so sometimes I've seen some of my teammates, they do a lot of work in the evening from the 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. because they want to go home early and spend more time with their kids. Or now with the pandemic, a lot of parents are educating their kids. So all of these processes that are normal, that came from the Industrial Revolution, need to be evaluated. And maybe that scares some people, but how would you feel if, your medical technologies and medicine and all of this was, everything is evolving, but work and this norm, we've been put in this box, and for the first time, we're going to start changing it. The next thing that I think is going to change a lot is norms. What is normal at work? What can you wear to work? How can you dress? How can you express yourself? What conversations are you allowed to have in the office? This scares a lot of employers, but I think the better, a more appropriate solution is if you don't think your employees have the ability to have difficult conversations about differences in political views or social views, then as an employer, I would rather invest in my employees to give them better communication skills, instead of just trying to put that in a box and let's pretend that this isn't here. Invest in your employees and develop a stronger culture so that people are able to have conversations about differences in views. But again, another really interesting thing that I think is going to change internally at work, I think work is going to be a lot more fun for a lot of people. I have a buddy from semester at sea, fall 2007, who works at a different big tech company, and he is on the culture committee there. And he was sharing some of the ideas that are going around the very, very large company, one of the biggest in the world, how they're reimagining internal meetings and presentations. Just to give you some quick examples, most presentations are very formal, look super polished, not a lot of energy, but they're starting to say well, what happens if we, for this internal meeting, try to make the deck as ugly as possible? Content is still great, but if we make it look like a first grader created it, is that going to work? I don't know. If a teammate presented that to me, would I pay attention? Probably. It would be hilarious. And as long as you have good content and a good message, I think it would be fun. Or another one is that they're working with is taking each slide, and each slide you have something you're trying to communicate, saying hey, grandma, the purpose of this slide is this, and trying to just change the way people are just kind of in this monotone thing. And for me, I think this is a very exciting time for work to really just break out of everything. And we don't know what's going to work and what isn't, and it's probably going to be different for a while at a lot of companies, but everything is going to change. And we need to figure out how teamwork and social capital is going to work remotely. But again, these are problems that can be solved. We just need to figure that out. The next thing that is absolutely going to change is the office. I don't know what the future office is going to look like. I do think headquarters and remote offices are going to come back, but most companies will not be 5 days a week. They're, I think, hybrid, maybe working a few days remotely, maybe working a few days in the office for collaboration. You're going to have half teams working 100% remotely. So maybe shared office spaces are gonna be more prominent, because you can have employees now who could live in Idaho or Montana, or just very remote areas, and maybe they still want to be part of a shared office space. So I think the office is very unknown, but the office as it was, 100% will not return, even close to where it was. The next thing I think is digital transformation. A lot of companies have already kind of quote unquote gone through digital transformation, but if you take a step back and think about what happened with this pandemic, the pandemic pushed everyone exclusively online, all work 100% online. So similar to as consumers, we expect everything online these days to we have a very high standard for what a checkout experience should be, about how we should look at products. That just happened with work. So now there's going to be a workforce that is expecting everything to be online, everything to be remote friendly. So who's going to lose here? Companies that have these analog processes that still require you to sign papers in person, to be these in-person processes. And just to put a little more data behind kind of what's happening with the digital transformation, if you look at the S&P 500, and maybe there are some of you who don't know what the S&P 500 is, it's really just a stock index of the 500 most largest companies in the United States. And in 1964, the average company stayed on that index once they made it there 33 years. And in 2027, we're expecting that to go down to 12 years. And so this is just giving you a sense of how quickly technology and companies and innovation is changing. It's happening very, very fast. The last process that I think is going to change pretty drastically for work is this thing I like to kind of put in transparency or openness. So I definitely have a bias because I work at Slack, but email is a tool that from the 80s and it's not very useful for collaboration. It creates a lot of information silos, a lot of reply all, and I think there's going to be a pretty big shift where decisions are going to be made in more public channels. And email in the next 5 to 10 years, I don't think it's going to completely die, but I think we're going to be using it at such a significant rate. Well, and I think I just got a question. Let me take this question. Can you speak to the things that you may have seen or are thinking about in regard to accessibility with more people working strictly strictly digitally or remotely, asking for a colorblind friend? Yeah, that's a super great question. Yeah, so I can speak a little bit to that. That is an emerging field in a lot of technology companies. There are product designers and web designers that are coming in with a specifically thinking about accessibility. The same way as on the, if you look at the streets, there are ramps for individuals who can't walk up the ramps. And there's a lot of accessibility in a lot of public spaces. And a lot of technology companies, not all, but definitely the larger ones, accessibility is a much more top of mind. I can't speak specifically for any colorblind accessibility. I can look into it and follow up if you want to share your email with Kate, and we could start a conversation about that. but yeah, I do know accessibility is much more top of mind to make a lot of these services accessible. And actually, I think it was on a podcast I was listening to not too long ago, that is actually accessibility for individuals who have certain types of disabilities, who maybe weren't able to commute into an office. They're going to notice more opportunities because they're able to do the role 100% capable to do the role, but not able to commute as easily into certain office spaces. So I do think those are going to be some positive trends, but yeah, I hope that answered your question. Great. So kind of picking back up, we talked about processes are going to change, norms, the office is going to change. The expectation for employees is going to be having everything be remote friendly, and then transparency. I do think email is going to become almost very not used. And there are a lot of signals and trends that I see. I know internally at Slack, we don't use any email. So, and I'm starting to see other trends working with customers and with some of the Slack products where we've now can connect external Slacks to communicate. And once teams get used to using Slack and communicating in Slack, people just don't want to go back to email. I know I get very frustrated writing emails. I don't know if you've ever had that moment where you proofread an email 3 times, 4 times, you hit send, right when you hit send, and you go, oh my gosh, a typo right there. I spelled their name wrong. I've reread everything but their name. And you know, with Slack or other collaboration tools, you can just hit edit. You don't have, it's not a big deal, and fix that typo. And anyways, there are lots of problems. I don't want to turn this into me not being a fan of email, but I do think that's going to change. So now moving on to, I think maybe the section of this presentation that is going to be exciting for some is maybe for those that want to follow in my footsteps, or not even mine, but like I think I'm going to talk about some very hard skills that employers will try to quantify and be able to quantify, and then I'm just going to share some softer skills or 3 things that I think really allowed me to arrive where I'm at today. And no one told me these things, but looking back, these things absolutely shaped my ability to get here. So skills 2.0. Oh, let me go back real quick. Before I jump into the skills, absolutely the future still is going to need artists, fitness instructors, doctors, lawyers, dentists. The future absolutely has all of these professions. And also, as it relates to technology, I do think there's still a ton of value if you want to be an engineer or be, have a role with a technical capacity. These are also gonna do that. But I've tried to think about what skills are going to transcend the next 6 months to 10, 20, 30 years. And I say that because, even engineers are working themselves out of jobs. The problems engineers were solving 10 years ago are very different than they're solving today. And the tasks they do, a lot of them are being automated now. So I'm trying to think of, considering AI and a lot of these things that are coming in, what are 3 skills that will transcend in technology, but also across many, many other fields. So you already saw this first one, storytelling. And that sounds simple. I really think you could spend a lifetime learning to be a storyteller, and you would still just be like, you might still be good, you might be great, but it is a skill that just takes a ton of practice to become a great storyteller, to be able to engage audiences across a lot of different situations, understand like how to communicate to them, understand how you're being perceived, and then move them through a story. And I put this skill here because as we've talked about software earlier, software solves these problems, and you have thousands of tools now that are all saying the same things in the same words, but there are people on the end of that who are able to have these certain types of conversations and communicate more effectively to share how maybe software is going to help you help your organization more, what types of solutions. So I think this storytelling ability, and this translates to more than just sales. Even if you have your own little your own business, and when you have a website, if you have any media that you create with it, you're telling a story. So your ability to understand who you're communicating to and how you're coming off is important. This was, if you would have asked me this question 6 months ago, I don't think I would have put digital presence on there. But as I touched on earlier, what COVID-19 has done is thrown everyone 100% online. So when I talk about digital presence, I'm talking about everything. What's your LinkedIn look like? Do you have a personal website? What's your resume look like? Do you have any other content or other social platforms? How are you, what image are you putting out, and what kind of consistent message? I even take this a step further. Like, you need to be aware, if you have a job and we're talking about getting promoted or anything like that, you need to be hyper aware of how you're leaving comments. How do you write emails? How do you leave comments in Slack? How do you update a Salesforce report or anything like that? Because now with these digital copies of, if you make a joke, what if your VP or manager or someone who you don't even know is just browsing through that a week later, a month later, and they see a joke and maybe they don't think that's funny. Maybe they didn't get your tone or your humor. So your digital presence and everywhere you leave a comment matters so much, especially in this next wave of work. So a lot of people are always telling you to just like put a lot of content out or do these things. Just take some time to think about like what you're about to write, because once you write things on the internet and push things there, it is very hard to take that back. So yeah, digital presence is a big one. And remember, the goal with digital presence is you want to be 1 in a million, not 1 of a million. So yeah, think about that. The last is critical thinking. And critical thinking is tough to quantify, but I think the problems that the employees in this next wave are going to start facing are problems no one's ever seen before. And you're constantly having to work with new people, with new situations, very different from the factory before, in the Industrial Revolution, where it was just like, this is your one job, you do this one thing, you do this well, and you think about nothing else, and we try to make you do it as fast as possible. A lot of companies are looking for people who can take problems daily in situations and navigate these problems without always having to get a manager. Can they take a step back and look at all of these aspects of a situation? Who's involved? What's the impact? What does this person care about? What's on? Did I sense anything from this person? They seem a little stressed today. Let me check in about that. Like having a lot of these dynamic skills and being able to like take a step back and look at things holistically is going to be incredibly valuable for really any role that you take. So anything you can do to work on critical thinking is going to be very valuable. And so, I'll leave you with 3 unofficial skills. And this first one is building relationships. So I think if you went to any professional event, a lot of people talk about networking. Networking, I thought for the longest time I sucked at networking, but it wasn't until a few years ago I realized what networking was for me. It's building relationships. And when we're talking about building relationships, just be genuine in the relationships you build. So when you start a new job or meet new teammates, before just jumping into work, build a relationship. Ask, how are you doing? Like, tell me about your life, your hobbies. Who are you? Do you anything they want to share? And the same goes for if you meet people when you get back to the office. meeting people in the office, or if you go to professional networking events, just be genuine in these relationships you build. And over time, people will remember how you made them feel. And let's say you went to a networking event and you wanted a certain profession, and then 5 years you were super nice to someone and you connected on LinkedIn, and then 5 years later you realize, actually I want to get into software engineering, or I want to get into sales engineering, or whatever industry you want to get into. And you just reach out to that person. They're going to be more open to work with you and to help you, but you don't know that. So just my advice is focus on building relationships and be genuine and authentic in how you approach that. Don't want things from people. The second would be inspiring people. And I think a lot of us, or people watching this, definitely already get that, because we were all on semester at sea. But I truly believe the people you surround yourself with is one of the most important choices you're going to make, and you will become a product of the people you surround yourself with. So if you surround yourself, whatever industry you want to get into, surround yourself with people who are a level above you, several levels above you. Focus on building those relationships, and eventually you will become those people, if that's the direction you want to go. A lot of people reach out to me on LinkedIn. They don't even know me, and they're just like, hey, can you refer me to Slack? Hey, can you give me career advice? They're just like immediately trying to like take things from me. And where a different approach, a simple approach, would just be like, maybe just follow me. Maybe be authentic and genuine in commenting on some of the things I post, or asking questions on some of the things I post. And then over time, opening a message with like, hey, I've been following you for a couple weeks. You've said some really cool things, or I'm super interested in this. I'm very curious about a career in sales engineering and what your experience is like as you transitioned into tech. I would be so open to talk to someone if someone did that, but no one does. They just, so, getting aligned with that stuff. And then the last thing is passion. Whatever you choose in life, there are always going to be people who are smarter than you, more technical than you, who have more experience than you, more money than you, whatever it is. Like, you can't control those things. What you can control is you can be the most passionate person in the room. You can be the warmest, you can be the genuinest, find those superpowers and bring those forward. And I think over time, if you just do these things and know where you want to go, like, you will start to attract and draw more people into your life. So that is kind of everything. I'm going to end on this quote from Dr. Seuss. It's not about what it is, it's about what it can become. And I think that's very true for the future. We don't know what it's going to become. And even as individuals, if you're feeling some uncertainty with all of this change, it's not about where you're at today. It's about where you're going to go. And I've made a lot of mistakes. I've failed a lot of times. I've taken several wrong turns. And I know if I was able to kind of get here, I truly mean everyone watching this is also able to get wherever they're trying to go. So in closing, keep changing the world and crushing life. Semester at Sea family, you got this. So thank you for your time, the gift of your time.
Thank you so much, Alex.
Yeah, of course. It was a pleasure to chat with you all.
Yeah, no, I think that was great. And I really liked when you talked about some of the unofficial skills that employers are looking for. I think those are some of the top skills that Semester at Sea, engenders in our alumni and our students, our Voyagers, being genuine, authentic, seeking to build authentic relationships, and also, of course, the flexibility and adaptability and the critical thinking skills. So I'm glad that you touched on those, because I think that is something that I hear time and again from our Semester at Sea alumni, that is something that they take away from the experience. I don't know if you would agree, but I appreciate you referencing those.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree.
Yeah, well, and I just have two more questions for you. I wanted you if you don't mind, to talk about some of your early career experience when you were the founder of Born to Back. If you wanted to tell us a little bit about that experience, what that was like, taking that leap of faith.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm more than happy to talk about Born to Backpack. And, when I think back to Born to Backpack, uh, honestly, it comes down to not, there were so many things I didn't know. I think I had a lot of passion and a lot of drive, and surrounded myself with a couple of really incredible people to work on the idea. And we took it in some ways farther than we ever did. But when we actually tried to make it sustainable or make it profitable, like over time, this was difficult. And that came from a lack of experience, a lack of knowing what we were doing, a lack of having mentors, a lack of financing, a lack of understanding how businesses work. And so eventually, after a little over a year of running it, we decided to kind of wind that down. It was definitely a difficult experience, but also a great experience. Like I think sometimes you learn so much from like when you try new skills and new ideas.
Yes, I think that's definitely true. Sometimes you learn through the hardest, most painful experiences. Later on, you realize that those are some of the most valuable, transformative experiences.
Mhm. Yeah.
And we have one other question from someone who's watching. A fellow alum wants to know, do you think that you'll get back to the ship for a voyage to share these lessons anytime soon?
That would be a dream. That would be a dream. I would probably drop a lot of things for an opportunity to go back on semester at sea. And yeah, that would be a dream. I think one thing that I didn't share about my story, like how I kind of specifically transitioned into tech, was I went to a coding school 6 years ago.
Mhm.
And I'm not doing a lot of coding today. I'm still very technical, but that was really a transition in. And I think a topic that I've I feel pretty comfortable speaking about is like, I don't know, anything around technology, like how technology companies work, and
Mhm.
how are they scaling, how are they growing, like different business processes, or like even like how to teach people these foundational technology skills. I think what coding boot camps did is they basically said, okay, you actually don't need to have gone to Stanford or this other school and have an engineering degree there. We can actually identify the most important skills that you need to do this job, and we're going to teach you them in a few months, and then you're going to be able to compete for these roles at these like really competitive tech companies. And so I think there's a lot of carryover from that could be useful to just this next wave of people, students, and
Yeah.
people entering the workforce.
Yeah, well, thank you. I think your presentation came at the perfect time when everything around us is changing, and we don't know what the landscape will look like, but we know it will look different, than it does now. But you gave us a nice idea of what to expect. So I really appreciate you sharing your expertise and your knowledge on that matter.
Yeah, I'm happy to share. I hope anyone listening found it helpful. And if you have any further questions, feel free to reach out. I'm more than happy to chat via any platform. I think I should be pretty easy to find online.
Yes, and we'll make sure that we put your contact information in the comments. Before we close, or do you have any closing thoughts about semester at sea or your fellow alumni? Anything else you'd like to share, Alex?
Any closing thoughts? I think looking back, like I said, semester two was a pivotal experience for me. It was then, and it still is now. Some of my closest friends are still, and most active friends are semester at sea alumni. I think we've been really lucky to have a group, and our group text is pretty active. So
Mhm.
yeah, I'm grateful for the experience, the people I got to meet, and the rich friendships and relationships that I still have as a result of semester C. Actually, a little fun fact, probably one of the best gifts I ever got. Behind me, you probably can't see, but there's a bottle, and this bottle has sand from every country that I visited on Semester at Sea. It was a friend from Semester at Sea gave that as a gift to me at the end of
Aw,
the voyage. So yeah, I'm very grateful for the experience.
so great. I love that you still have it.
Oh, that's coming with me forever.
Yes, you'd be amazed what our alums will pull out what they still have from their voyage or mementos from friends. So thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, of course.
Well, thanks so much, Alex. In closing, I thank all of our alumni and friends for joining us at these Wavelengths series. We'll be back next Wednesday between 4 and 6 Mountain Time. And I just wanted to remind everyone, as you all consider giving back to causes that you care about, we just like to remind you that Semester at Sea is a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we need your support now more than ever. Your gifts of any size make a difference. And if you are able to, we really encourage you to consider giving a recurring monthly gift. Those gifts will have the greatest impact at this time. And finally, if you or anyone that you know from your voyage, or a friend of yours, a lifelong learner that was part of your extended family, anything from your voyage, if you guys want to participate in a future Wavelengths alumni series, please let us know. You can email wavelengths@semesteratsea.org to be considered. And we'd love to hear from you. We have alumni doing really cool things all over the world. So thanks again for your time, Alex. And I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Okay.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone. Good evening.